Hello, everyone. This is Rick, and welcome to Astral Club. This is Meeting Nature Spirits. Before we get into it, just want to mention Patreon. If you'd like to support us on Patreon and the work that we do in Astral Club, spreading the information about spiritual growth through astral projection, you can do so on Patreon. When you join, you get advanced episodes on Sunday, a library of downloaded episodes for your podcast app, and an email where we can talk back and forth. And if you're interested, there will be a link in the description. Next up, private lessons. If you'd like a lesson to learn how to astral project, be more than glad to work with you. If interested, just send me an email requesting information, and you'll find that email also in the description. Nature spirits. I don't consider myself an expert on nature spirits. I have had several encounters, and this was long before I met the plant people on Planet Haven, and I really got to understand the plant-based mind versus the animal mind a little bit more clearly. And I think if I contact them in the future, the variety of nature spirits here on Earth, I think I might have more luck. But the one time I did contact a nature spirit was quite by accident. I was flying over a deep forest, and I was suddenly attracted to something below, so I landed. That's when I saw this tree spirit. It looked kind of like, if you've ever seen that movie Predator, the Predator is an alien, and it has this shield which allows it to blend into the environment so that it can't be seen, which of course is an ideal situation if you're in combat and he's a hunter. At any rate, enough with weird movies. The bottom line is that I could see that it was a spirit, but it was very well camouflaged. I tried to communicate with it, and all it did was kind of sink deeper into the tree and hide. So I wasn't there to cause any problems, or obviously this spirit wasn't open to talking with me at this point. So I left. But I look forward to another experience in the future, hopefully. So I went to a particular website called the College of Psychic Studies. It's in the UK. And that's where I found some of this basic information about nature spirits. And this is all in varieties of European myths and other types of cultural myths as well. Although this particular one seems to be centered more on a European type belief system in these plant spirits and the various myths. So what I'd like to do is to talk to you first about what is a nature spirit, and what varieties do they come in? And then I want to get into how you can then contact a nature spirit with astral projection, and even if you haven't been able to astral project yet, at least according to this particular site. I'm going to rely upon them and their information for contacting these spirits without astral projection, because my experience with astral projection tells me that these entities exist very near the physical plane, but just beyond the typical physical range that we humans can perceive in normal consciousness. So they're vibrating just a little bit above the typical awareness level for beings in physical bodies. That's why astral projection can be valuable, because it allows you to vibrate at a higher level and hopefully get more of a chance to communicate. But there's also ways, according to the site, that you can communicate with them even before you have learned how to astral project. So first of all, let's get into what we're talking about here. The first up is a plant diva. Now, before the word diva mutated into a description of entitled and spoiled movie stars and singers, it meant something very different. Traditionally, a plant diva was a nature spirit that inhabited plants, flowers, and other forms of vegetation. They are said to be responsible for the growth, health, and well-being of flora and are considered to be an important role in maintaining the balance of nature. Next up is the fairy. Now, the fairy is very deeply entrenched in Celtic and other European myths. And I assume there's other cultures that have different words for it as well. But of course, I'm the most familiar with the European things. And it's certainly this site seems to be aimed at that particular culture as well. So, what is a fairy? Well, it's often depicted as a tiny ephemeral being with wings. They're thought to be mischievous. However, they are also helpful to those who respect and honor nature. In essence, they are natural shepherds. Their world is the natural world, and they do their best to support the vegetation growth in the physical. Next up is the elemental. Now, the elemental is a different type of spirit. It's grouped into the categories of earth, air, water, and fire. And the myths about elementals go back many centuries. Alchemists were involved with elementals, trying to capture or borrow some of that energy. However, the names that we assign to these variety of creatures, and I believe that I have tangentially encountered elementals in the clouds. When I've passed through clouds to try to gain energy, I've often sensed intelligences that are very different from mine in the clouds. At the time, I wasn't in the space to try to contact them, and I have a feeling it would have been difficult because it's a very different order of intelligence, and after all, I was busy collecting energy to help regenerate my astral self to really get into any kind of conversations. But traditionally, you've got these 4 different elements, and you've got a coinciding creature that acts as a guardian, if you will, for the various elements. Gnomes are known to protect the earth. Undines are elementals that protect the water. Sylphs protect the air. And salamanders are associated with fire. Next up are nymphs. Nymphs are depicted traditionally as beautiful women, although I think that type of projection is about as reliable as sailors who imagined mermaids when they had been at sea for many months and saw a glimpse of a seal or something in the water and allowed their imagination to take flight. I don't believe nymphs really look like we think they do, because once again, we're taking something that's not human and we do what human brains typically do. They transform something that's not human into something that humans can relate to. So essentially, you're taking a human form and attaching wings to it and calling it that a nymph. I personally think they're very different than that, but that's how they've been depicted. Naiads are typically associated with fresh water, rivers, lakes, springs. Oreads are nymphs of the mountains and rocky places. Dryads are nymphs of the trees, particularly oak trees. And I know that dryads were a big part of the Druidic religion in pre-Roman Britain. And the oak tree in particular was a very holy, powerful tree for the Druids. And dryads, being the shepherds of oak trees, were part of the worship of Druidism. Finally, there's the Nereids, which are nymphs of the sea, and they're often depicted riding on the backs of dolphins and other sea creatures. I think a lot of this type of stuff, once again, is a humanization of perhaps glimpses that people have seen in extraordinary states of being, maybe slightly altered consciousnesses, and they went ahead and took that thing that they saw and molded it into something that is understandable and identifiable for humans. It's what we do. Nymphs were worshipped in ancient Greece as powerful and benevolent spirits that could bring fertility, prosperity, and protection to the land and its inhabitants. They were also believed, on the negative side, to have the power to curse those who angered them or disrespected their domains. That is something that's also deeply buried in European mythology. The idea being that if you harm nature, particularly in a vandal type way, vandalizing nature for no particularly good purpose, harvesting without thanking is what would prompt the anger of these beings. So how do you connect with nature spirits? Well, once you learn to astral project, it's a matter of taking yourself to, it's best if it's like an old growth forest, something that hasn't been continually logged and then replanted. They're the best place deep in the woods to find these types of entities because they're far away from humans and their habitations and their interference and their destruction. Let's face it, we humans have not done the greatest job of being shepherds of this planet. Instead, we've been harvesters of this planet, vandals of this planet. So you can't blame these entities who are on a completely different order of intelligence than we are. You can't blame them for being shy of humans. If we had done to you what humans had done to plants, you'd be ducking humans too. So with astral projection, it's a lot easier, I think, to at least try to contact these types of spirits because it's easier to see them because you're already vibrating at a level above the typical physical range, which humans in their normal consciousness don't have access to. But let's say for a minute that your astral projection capabilities just haven't quite developed to that degree yet, or you're still trying to get started. Is there anything that you can do to perhaps get in contact with these spirits? Well, according to this site, there is. First up is practice meditation or visualization. Apparently, these two things can be valuable tools. Find yourself a quiet spot somewhere in nature. Settle into that space where you can focus on an image or representation of a nature spirit. It helps to come up with a picture in your mind, and you can even use the typical pictures that humans have created. The important thing, though, is to change your emotional makeup at that point in time. You want to excise any feelings of anger and hatred and destruction that, let's face it, are in all of us to one degree or another. And you want to put forth very pleasant, very calming, very peaceful type vibes. That's how you can start getting in contact with these types of spirits. Once you visualize the spirit, you can ask for guidance or wisdom and be open to whatever comes to you in whatever form it comes. It may not come in the way that you think it should, but you may receive a message of sorts, and be open to that and examining it. Next up, spend time in nature. One of the best ways to connect with nature spirits and plant spirits is to spend time in nature, surrounded by plants and trees. Take a walk in the woods or a park. I mean, not everybody has access to an old growth forest, for instance. Sit under a tree. Spend time in your garden. Try to be present and mindful of the natural world around you. Observe the plants and trees with curiosity and reverence. That's important. Typically, when natives killed an animal for food or harvested plants for food, they would offer thanks. They would offer a pinch of tobacco as a way to thank the spirits of the plants and the animals that they consumed. They believed they were part of nature, not separate from it, like many humans have assumed over the centuries. And as part of nature, it's only polite and right to thank that spirit that allows you to consume this animal or this plant to sustain you. Use plant medicine. Many plant medicines, such as herbs, essential oils, and flower essences, are believed to carry the energetic properties and wisdom of the plants they come from. Working with these medicines can be a powerful way to connect with plant spirits and access their healing properties. Next up, create a plant altar. I know that sounds a little weird, but setting up a special altar or sacred place in your home or garden can be a powerful way to honor and connect with plant spirits. Include representations of these plants or plant spirits that are meaningful to you, such as statues, crystals, dried herbs, maybe drawings that you've done. It should be a drawing that you've done, because then there's a direct connection there between you and the spirit of that particular plant. Spend time at your altar each day offering gratitude and reverence to the plants and spirits. Once again, this reminds me of the Druidic religion, which was very natural based, and the connection to nature was thought of as the ultimate holy thing. Of course, all this was swept away when Christianity was introduced, and we lost a lot of this knowledge, and Druidism was all but exterminated by the Romans. Lastly, study plant folklore and mythology. Learning about the folklore and the mythology associated with different plants and plant spirits can deepen your understanding and connection to them. Read the books, watch the documentaries, or seek out teachings from spiritual teachers, somebody a lot better than me, or elders who have a deep knowledge of plant spirits and their traditions. So what you're doing here is you're trying to connect through, admittedly, mythological tales, but you're trying to connect to the core of these types of spirits, and that this type of method will perhaps make it easier for you to make that adjustment from your human way of thinking to a way of thinking that's more closely associated with the natural world, such that it would be easier for you to make contact with these beings. Well, that's what I had to talk about here today. I hope this will help anyone interested in contacting natural spirits. If you like this, please hit the like button, share it with those of like minds, subscribe if you haven't already, and most of you have, 85% of you have. So if you haven't, just hit the subscribe button. It's just easier, and last time I checked, it's free. And please give me those questions and comments. Have you ever had any contact with natural spirits? Even if you just think you did, let me know how you felt and what you learned or what you saw. I'm very interested in that subject because, as I said, I am not an expert in this particular area, and I'm not ashamed to admit it. Okay, as always, this is Rick, and I will see you on the astral plane.